Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Tamara Jenkins' new family drama, Private Life. The film stars Kathryn Hahn and Paul Giamatti as a couple struggling to conceive who undergo multiple fertility therapies. But the process of trying to add to their family challenges their relationship with each other as they descend deeper and deeper into the world of assisted reproduction and domestic adoption. In addition to Private Life, Ms. Jenkins' credits include the feature films The Savages and Slums of Beverly Hills. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Ms. Jenkins spoke with director Mike White about filming Private Life. During their conversation, Ms. Jenkins discusses washing dishes as an acting exercise, her personal connection to the film's subject matter, and why this film became the most direct deposit from her brain to the screen.
Hey,
Hi.
amazing movie. Pretty intense. This is like you're supposed to ask like, what was your inspiration like for this kind of movie? There's something so like raw and seemingly personal because it's so well observed. It almost feels like I'm prying by saying, where did you get the idea for this movie?
Are you asking?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for coming. This theater is so beautiful. I don't know if you've ever been to the DGA Theater in Manhattan, but that's where I live, and this is really different. This is like Lincoln Center. It's so beautiful. Anyway. So thank you so much for coming, and it's great to be here. And, there is a personal component that my husband and I went through our own fertility saga. Not that while I was in the throes of it was I thinking, oh, this is a great motion picture. Although I sometimes think that my first unconscious notion of making it into a movie was when my husband and I were in the middle of all this, whatever. We were in upstate New York and we went to the movies and the movie was Knocked Up. And we had been spending our days like injecting me and going to doctor's appointments and putting on estrogen patches. And then we go and watch this movie where, like two people have sex and they get pregnant. We totally forgot that was an option. And then I remember walking out of the theater and turning to my husband and saying, wow. Knocked up. What would ours be called? And I said, oh, knocked out. So I think on some unconscious level that must have been the beginning of thinking about it. I mean, I don't really think I was, but there's something in there.
I actually remember running into you at a restaurant like in New York. It was quite a few years ago, but it's hard to say. But like I remember you were like in the midst of like a kind of torturous process of I assume writing this movie.
Probably.
Where
were we?
I don't know, but I just remember it was like you were really, it felt like I caught you at a moment where it seemed like you were really kind of pulling your hair out a little bit about the writing process. And I know this is a director's guild, but I'm just curious, was this, I mean, I know it's been it took me 10 years between movies that I directed, so it's so like
that's
I'm
comforting.
in the same boat. But but was it the writing process that was part of what took you a long time to come to your next movie? Or
no, I think that the first draft, the real first draft, which was obscenely long, took 2 years, and it was 200 pages, and which always sort of happens to me where I just throw it all out there and then I have to chip away at it and turn it into something that has shape. And then once it was a thing that was presentable to financiers, that took a while. I feel like the whole thing was like 5 years between, writing it and then, having it get sort of stuck at a company for a year and not move, and then finally getting it, to a new company and all that classic stuff. So, yeah.
Well, there's so many ideas in the movie, and there's so much as a writer I want to ask you about, because this is a director's guild. I don't
But we're we're writer directors.
Well, I know, but I also feel like there's lots of other questions I want to ask you too. So as a director, I guess my next question would be: so then, when you had the script and you felt like you were confident or happy with it enough to want to go make it, what was the process of getting the cast and the pieces together to actually get behind the camera?
Well, it was at a different company, and it took a while for all of us to agree on Kathryn and Paul. And
they're so awesome.
I love them so much as a couple. They feel so authentic. I kept saying, they're not a movie couple, they're a couple. They're like people in a relationship, and not a movie version of that, which I really loved about them. Actually, there was a different actress playing Sadie, who once we left the first company and went to to Netflix, that actress fell out for and then we were very close to shooting the movie, and we had to find someone very fast, and we got to cast a person who wasn't known, which was really exciting. And I was very grateful that Netflix let us cast a relatively unknown person for such a big part.
So did she just audition?
She auditioned.
And you just...
Because we were really in trouble, because we were only a few weeks away from shooting, and Paul and Kathryn's schedule, there was no wiggle room because they both had commitments on the other side. And Jeannie McCarthy, who's my casting director, who's great, and started auditioning, I think maybe 90 girls, women, young women, and it was hard, and there was no one there. And I remember saying, "Isn't there a theater girl under a rock somewhere? Like, this is New York. There's got to be some theater girl under a rock. Like, it's just like doing a play somewhere that we don't know." And then she wrote me an email, and she said, "I just found this girl under a rock," but it wasn't really a rock because she had just come back from London, and she was in a Mark Rylance play, and she had just returned, and she auditioned, and she was fantastic. I mean, I was still nervous because she didn't have a body of work to refer to, but she was delicious. And
she's amazing. Just because, the movie's so funny, but their reality, they seem so like broken at the beginning. And then she comes in and she mirrors their life in a way that she sees something that they don't see, and is just this voice of some kind of, I don't know, hopeful, the illusions that they've been disillusioned from in some very poignant way. And she really captures
sort of romanticizes the way that they've been living, that they've been sort of burnt out by. Yeah. And then she's like, "You guys are like artists that live in New York."
Right. It's awesome. So so the writing process is somewhat tortured. What do you like on set as a director?
What am I like?
Yeah.
I guess you'd have to ask somebody else. But the first 11 days or whatever it was, half the movie was shot in their apartment, and we did that first, which was kind of amazing because it was like an incubator for us as a little family, the three of us, to really just get to know each other. And it was so intimate and intense, and it just felt like a little rep company, moving from bedroom to dining room to living room to kitchen. And I don't know, something about being contained like that was very good for us as a company. The three of us, the four of us. I don't know what I was like on. I mean, I feel like
do you enjoy?
Oh,
is it fun for you?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, when you're seeing the material, become three-dimensional, something that you've written that's flat on a page, and then Paul is doing what he does, and Kathryn. I mean, it's so glorious. It's like the most thrilling thing.
Yeah, it's beautifully realized. What do you find yourself like while you're shooting, the things that like obsess you the most? Is it what are your
I always feel like what I'm doing is I've set up kind of almost in a laboratory where, because I'm also the writer, where I created tension within the scene, because if I did it right, and the way that we've sort of set up the blocking, and that if I have done all of those things right, and where, that then I sort of step back and watch the chemical reaction take place before me in terms of performance and stuff. So I fail on occasion which I assume all directors do, but who knows, because it's so rare that you ever see another director direct. But, I guess my failures, I feel like I had one failing moment with Kathryn and one with Paul, never with Kaylee, where you would fixate on a take, or fixate on a scene, and you kind of almost go into like a trance where you're asking to do it again, and you're asking to do it again, and you're looking for something, and you're just kind of going down a rabbit hole of repetition. And I did that once with Kathryn, with the teeniest scene of all. It's like the smallest scene. And I did it once with Paul. And then I remember just kind of like my DP kind of kicking me, like, I think you've gone down a rabbit hole, and sort of waking. He's like, why are you making them do that again? And I was like, well, and then just kind of snapping out of it. I mean, it's a very low budget movie, so there wasn't a lot of time for that kind of indulgence. But I don't know if that's ever happened to you, where you're almost like, I don't know what it is. It must be nerves, or I don't know, or you're looking for something, but you don't know what it is, and you're making the poor actor, do it again. And it was anyway. I did that twice. I failed the actors each once, and I admitted it. I said I really was a jerk.
Too micro.
Yeah, I microed them to death, so they couldn't even they lost their instincts.
And like working with the different designers, like the production designer and cinematographer, do you often reference other movies? Are you watching a lot of movies before, like getting people to watch those, or are you really just talking through character and what are the kinds of conversations that?
With the cinematographer and we looked at a bunch of stuff. We were interested in doing long takes, not, having it be extremely cutty. And that was sort of a goal. I can't tell you everything that we watched. We were sort of talking about Gordon Willis, like everybody does. I love him so much. That was a great collaboration in terms of feeling like his name is Christos Voudouris. When I was prepping the movie, or when we were crewing the film, I was saying to I was like, I want a master. I want a cinematographer who's a master. And I was like, no masters are really going to be making my movie with me, I don't think. My movie that takes place in apartments in New York. And then his name came to me through a variety of ways. And he's Greek, but he lives in Madrid. And he doesn't have a huge body of work, but in American, he did a Linklater movie, and he did an Ira Sachs movie. And the Ira Sachs movie is very simple, super minimalist, but his framing was very beautiful, and I just felt something about him. And then we Skyped, and the long and the short of it is he ended up doing the movie. But I really feel like he is a master. He's like an unknown master. No one knows that he's a master, but he's a master. And he's eccentric, and he does a lot of commercials in Europe, and he's very picky about what features he does. And I just think he's really special. His eye is just, he'll do something that will, like, it's a dumb, I mean, I don't know, it's not a dumb example. There's a shot of Paul, the big scene where Paul and Kathryn are in bed and they have the big fight where he says, were we ever going to have sex again? And I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen. The opening shot of Paul, I remember just saying, okay, so we're going to set up over here and we're going to be on Paul. And I kind of turning away and then turning back, and Paul was sort of falling out of the bottom of the frame. That was the frame that the DP put on, how he set it up, which I never would have done. And it was so perfect. And it's like a touch. He's just touched. And I was like, that is just beautiful. And there was something about him slipping out of the bottom of the frame that seemed so expressive and so right.
Well, it feels still and it feels very close, and it obviously is very funny, but it's not shot like in a way that, I mean, it definitely felt like cumulatively by the time they're like back in, I just remember the one shot while they're waiting and all the people are still in the waiting room, and you're like, this is like a horror movie. And I think there's something about it that because you don't see babies in the movie, there's no babies. It's almost like it's almost like if you were like an alien coming, like, what are these people doing? It has this kind of dread, at least that was my experience. It was like I was laughing and it felt, it's so honest and poignant, but there is this feeling of, it's like there's something slightly horrifying about it.
Well, when we were making the movie, Paul Giamatti said, this isn't about the baby. This is Waiting for Godot.
Yeah, it does feel like
an existential.
It feels like an existential dread is very there, and it really does capture it in a way that is so. I haven't really and obviously it's filtered through the whole movie is this kind of sense of your life being reduced to your career or your role as your womanhood, your role as a mother, and what you've produced, and how are you fertile in this. And as they pass the baton to this girl, and she comes back, and she's now suddenly, like in those first moment where you see her sort of tortured, she's being like they're bringing her into this like. And it's deep, it's heavy and sad and yet so human and beautiful. So, congratulations. But and then I guess I don't know where we are, but in the editing, like, are you? Is that part fun? I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's also. I mean, I'm definitely the kind of person that sits there every single day like a lunatic. And it's interesting because some directors don't and some do, and sit there every day with the editor, like they're not leaving the room, and some walk away. I just find that so, and come back to see stuff. Anyway, I'm the one that doesn't leave, it's the putting together the first cut is very. I mean, I feel like I live in New York, and we were cutting it in New York, and we cut the movie, and I'd walk home, and every day, every time we sort of crack open a new scene to start, editing, I just was always convinced this one is not going to work. Like, this is the one that's not going to come together. And I don't know. It's incredibly exciting. I love editing because I feel like also the learning curve as a director just is so high because you see everything you have, what you could have had, what you didn't have. You see the flexibility of film and filmmaking. The pliability of it. So I don't know. It's an amazing place. It's also scary when something about cracking open the scenes. I always get this sick feeling, and the first the assembly is repellent, and I can barely look at them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it is for everybody, but it's just.
Do you feel like the movie morphed along at each stage, or do you feel like this movie is very close to the original kind of? I mean, obviously everything comes to life as it comes along, but do you feel like tonally or like, conceptually, like the ideas that excited you to write it, like, do you feel like they were, that they occur?
I do. I've only made 3 feature films, and I would say that this is the most direct deposit from like my brain to the screen without compromises, because I wasn't made to compromise by Netflix, which was pretty astonishing. Like there was no meddling. And I feel like it was pretty, I didn't feel like it was mangled and that I screwed it up royally, and that I feel like it's close. And then it becomes something like a third thing, which is whatever I was talking about, that alchemy thing that happens. But yeah, I think it's close. That it's doing the things that I was interested in it doing.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's, for me, like this one scene that felt completely mitigated pleasure was when she gets to Yaddo and she has this room. And it's like, there is something, to me, I am curious to, I guess, poke you a little bit about, like, because all of the motherhood stuff is so fraught, and there's so much regret that just between Molly's character and Kathryn, and it's like, and this, like, the artist's room, and that there's still some sort of it's a potential, and without any of the, like, there's no fang there. It feels very, very generous there. As somebody who's been making movies, and like, do you still I mean, I'm just curious where your heart is as far as, like, talking about some of these ideas that come up in the movie.
It's interesting because I guess not that I planned it that way, but I realized that the movie, while I was writing it, and kind of, I don't know at what point the consciousness became clear about this idea that there were these three female characters in the movie, and that they were each so informed by, their characters were so informed by their biological reproductive moments, where one was a 20-something kind of fertile, exploding fertility person who would not be in any position to have a kid. And then a woman who's sort of at the end of her, and then like pushing the envelope, and then Molly, who's kind of empty nesting, and in a menopausal state. And I don't know. That was something that I didn't set it out for it, but it was
just interesting because the way into it was like talking about this couple that they'd had kids and they never, and out of, I guess, it almost felt like there was some sort of, you're drawing some sort of idea out that, people who are, can when they don't have children, are able to put some of this kind of, energy or, like,
because
parental,
that's what the Yaddo, the people that Yaddo's is artist colony in upstate New York, and the Trasks, the husband and wife, did lose all these children. It's horrible, but they created this place where there was this life that they would invite artists to, like, come there, and millions of. And it just became this fertile ground, despite the fact that there's children buried all over the place. So yeah, there was something in that, and that a different kind of birth. And also, I always felt like that, they were dropping Sadie off to college, like they already had a kid.
It definitely felt like they were, starting to, it was a mothering or a parental relationship, and it's an intense film. Anyway, I want to open up a few questions so other people can ask before we have to wrap up.
There's a card that says 5 minutes. I'm going to talk really fast. We did not, but the one thing that I did that was the sort of like the smart thing that I did was that Paul and Kathryn fell into the city of New York. This is before the movie was it was before pre-production. Kathryn was doing Bad Moms press, and Paul was about to go to Poland to shoot something, but they were in the city at the same time for a second. And I wanted them to get together. So by the time they did come together and we had a couple of days of rehearsal, it was like working in them, working that they had a memory of each other, that there could have been something sort of brewing in their, subconscious about each other. So we had this dinner. We did it at Paul's house. And I made dinner for them, and I gave them a couple of acting exercises. The one was I made them wash the dishes because I thought that was very marital, and that would be a good physical activity that would make them married. And we went through the script, and we read every scene, and we talked about every scene. And then I called up a donor egg website page, and I had them pick an egg donor. And we had this really long night together, but it was one night. And then we didn't see each other for months. And then when it was time, we had like 3 days of rehearsal, proper rehearsal in the city with Kaylee and them. And that was the first time Kaylee got to meet them. So it was short, but they're also such, they're so, anyway, that was like the smartest thing I ever did to make that meeting happen in advance. Well, not from a topic point of view, but from a rhythm point of view. And I showed it at Sundance in January, but we were rushing to hit the deadline for Sundance, and I knew it wasn't locked. It was flabby, but I didn't know where, and I had ideas, but we didn't have enough time to test them before we went there. And so I went with a cut, and then I came home from there, and I did some more work and, chipped away at some stuff in the third act that was lumpy, and so that was a big thing. I mean, it was subtle, it was very surgical and small, but it wasn't an issue related thing. It was a rhythm thing. Well, this is written exactly like it is. When I was writing it, I struggled for a minute there. Like, I used to sort of think that somewhere in the Halloweenness of it all, that it would end, and it was very unsatisfying. And I remember getting very, it's funny, some people, it's an interesting ending. Some people, audiences are like mad. They think that maybe there's something parsimonious of me not giving them a kid. And I knew I never wanted them. I knew that the movie was about a marriage. And that was, to me, the happy ending of this movie, which is a very muted notion of a happy ending, but was Paul getting up from one side of the booth and going to the other side of the booth. To me, that was the happy ending. And then to linger on them and to sit with them in real time and feel the kind of, here we are-ness of it all, and the worry: is she going to come? Is she not going to come? That's almost like a tale on the end of after he holds her hand and sits there and says, "That's better." I don't know if that answers the question. It wasn't like a punk rock. I mean, I feel like I said, it's not like this punk rock move that I was like, I'm not going to give him a kid. But I really believe that it wasn't really about that. It was about them, and it was about survival.
It's about the existential dread.
Yes, it's about the existential dread.
It's waiting for Godot.
It's waiting for Godot.
No, I do. I mean, and the movie does touch on all the judgments that go on with these kinds of decisions. Yes. And I feel like like any good movie, you're going to, people's reactions to the movie are going to say as much about where they come out on all of these things as it does about the quality of the movie, because that's inarguably amazing. It's great.
Right. Well, like that, somebody saying, well, why don't they just adopt? And why don't they, all of the opinions about what is something very private that becomes this kind of thing that everybody's...
You see it as like, why are these people trying to start a plastic factory in this day and age?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Say that again?
Oh, yeah, he's asking about the explicit nudity.
You mean the scene with Kathryn? The vagina? You know what? It's an amazing story because it wasn't written in the script that way. And Kathryn was cast. And then as I was looking over I thought, oh, this would be real. What if she was, doing something like weird domestic cleaning or whatever, but then she came out and that she had nothing on in that weird, I don't know, way. And that weird domestic nudity way. I don't know how else to call it. And I came up with the idea, but it wasn't written there. It's not like we had a nudity clause or whatever what's it called?
A waiver?
Oh, wait, no, not a nudity. Like where you go full frontal or where you make a thing. It was an idea that came after she was cast in the movie. And I told her, I said, I have this idea that I think it would be kind of amazing if you came out. And then there was this kind of almost like double entendre vagina thing happening where it's like, oh my God, and the vagina on the wall, and then the vagina, and then this. And so I thought it would be really funny, and and I liked it, and I said it to her, and I was really nervous. And she said, oh yeah, that's a good idea, let's do it. And I was like, and then I kept thinking like she didn't hear me. And every time I saw her, I was like, like the vagina scene with the, what about if you, and she was like, yeah. And then another time, she's like, I said, yeah, like totally. And she was just so relaxed about it. And I was like harping on the vagina thing. And then the irony of ironies was that because of our shooting schedule, it had something to do with when the woman who played the social worker was available and blah, blah, blah. It was like the first day of principal photography. And I said to her, okay, this is really horrifying, but the vagina thing that I'm really fixated on, it's either like day 1 or day 2. And I know that's really weird. And she said, you know what? Let's do it day 1 because then I don't know the crew and I can do it. Day 2, I'll know who they are and I don't want them looking at my ass then. Or something like that. So it was she is so, I was freaking out and she was incredibly not freaked out about it. She's amazing.
Well, I'm sad that we're out of time, but Tamara, it was such a good movie, and thank you all for staying, and thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have a lot more for you in the coming weeks as awards season approaches, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.